This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by the Infinite Studios booth and the Chasing Artwork booth at the Fan Expo Toronto show this August 22nd to 25th. Come see us in person.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I am GMB Kimichek. I'm here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, who is known the world over as Chasing Artwork, and Dan Vadeboncoeur, who made it through a downtown tragedy to be here today.
Well, I didn't actually go through it. It just was the reason for the traffic snarl. But I was not part of the hit and run.
Yeah, we won't be glib about the loss of life in our city, but I'm glad that you were here.
It's always an adventure coming downtown. It is. It really is coming in on the bus in Winnipeg.
I also have been lately either walking. I usually walk or take the bus, and the bus has changed in the last year.
Yeah.
In a good way?
It's more exciting.
Was that in part certain people, the home impaired now can ride the bus for free?
Oh, like there's I don't think that's not the contingent that I'm referring to.
Okay.
I usually find that people who are unhoused who get on the bus and they just need a place to go. That's all they want. They're not there to cause any trouble. Okay. They've got enough trouble in their life. Yeah. No, it's usually, for me, I don't know what your bus rides are like, but mine, usually the excitement arises when a man of a certain age decides that he is going to interrupt a conversation on the bus with a newly arrived immigrant, or with a young woman, or with a person of color, and then it erupts into a argument that other people on the bus have to intercede.
Wow.
That's where my adventures happen on the bus.
So it's like the arguments around, like, these are the things that are happening in our society, and the bus is just another public place where these things happen, right?
It's the third space, right? Yeah.
Society's crumbling. I do get that feeling. I do feel like we've slipped into the dark timeline at some points, right? It does kind of feel that way. But anyway, how are you doing, Gregory?
No, we're going here. Let's go here. I don't know what the term is, or how to pronounce it properly. And this is the problem when you look at concepts that come from other cultures, is you'd read it, as an Anglo, I read this. There's a Japanese phrase, which I cannot pronounce, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but I've been reading about it lately, which arose after the end of World War II, where the sudden industrialization of Japan resulted in this stratified layer of where the future was. People were in different points of the future that was happening all at the same time. So you'd have a person who was used, their highest form of technology they had ever seen or used on a day-to-day was a rickshaw, and you had other people who were involved in the development of mass transportation, right? And they are sharing the world at the same time. And it creates a sense of, the concept is about the individual loneliness that creates for everybody, because people don't have things in common. And I've been, I see this. This is what I see on that third space of the bus, is that we're all in the same place at a different point in our future, quote unquote. And William Gibson, I've said it before on this podcast, my favorite quote of his about that is that the future is already here, but it has not been evenly distributed. And that is 100% what I'm seeing around. And that's sort of the role of storytellers, is to make sense of the world now. Science fiction, fantasy, it isn't about a different world. It's a way to express your feelings about this world. So why don't we use that as what we talk about today?
My mind went to Elysium and District 9 as you were talking.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
I feel like those are, Elysium is definitely a futuristic story, but District 9 I always took as a contemporary story, just set in kind of an alternate timeline, I thought of Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Which I actually hate as a film. I really hate it. I watched it again
I saw
recently.
you did a review of it, and you just were down.
God, it's awful. It's just like the lowest base humor you can imagine. Like they basically equate the whole idea is that America has dumbed down because of the current, and it's like 20 years old almost, this movie, and people are saying it's been prophetic in the way it's predicted the future. Yes. But I just think they just kind of threw a bunch of ideas out there, and some of them seem kind of familiar to what's happening now, so they feel like it's predicted. It's like The Simpsons. It's like what The Simpsons does, right? If you throw a bunch of darts at the wall, eventually one of them's going to hit.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of that going on. But yeah, that kind of thing where they basically try to envision what's going to happen and like where are we going? What is our path in terms of technology, in terms of society, in terms of all these different things?
Well, and I think that's one of the ways in which fiction seems prophetic, but it isn't. It's our ability to recognize patterns is you can hear 100 ideas or 200 ideas in a novel, and 10 that you recognize, you believe were them predicting the future. But it could have been a different 10. You know.
Right.
And related to that, I was listening to a summation of early chatbot development and how it really functioned. And the most succinct way that I heard it explained was that the early ones are doing no more than what you had in predictive texting. You'd be texting, it's like, I think I will be home late. This was, I think, NPR, I was listening to NPR talking about this. So I'm paraphrasing. These are not my ideas. Someone smarter than me came up with this. But the text bot says, okay, I'm going to be home late, early, right? And then it's just predicting what's common, but it's not considering. It doesn't know. It's not reading. It doesn't know the meaning of late or early. It just knows from all the text that's been fed, these are the common replacements of that idea. Mm-hmm. So what can sometimes happen, I think, when you're writing fiction is you are doing that predictive fill in the blanks for a future. But if you're just making up a story, you're just putting in what you think is likely, and it's based on your experience up until now. And if it's based on your experience up until now, and you've been living in the world and actually consuming the experience of being alive, well, then those are fairly predictable outcomes. It's some A/B testing is going on, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're not actually predicting the future. You're just pointing out a likely outcome given the circumstances.
Yeah.
Right?
So where do flying cars come into this?
You want a flying car?
Well, no.
You want the guy who cut you off in traffic last to have access to a flying car?
But I want to know why it was such a popular idea for so long that this was going to be in the future. Like Back to the Future 2 made it very popular, but even before that, it was a popular... Like, I read all kinds of science fiction books when I was younger with flying cars.
I have a very strong theory for this.
Okay.
This is my idea, so you can hold me accountable, dear listener. In the World War I, aircraft were magic. But the only people who were allowed to be World War I fighter pilots were the aristocracy. That's where they brought in, that's the idea of the Red Baron, right? You had to be of a certain class before they'd even let you fly a plane. So when all those people were being shot down in that first wave, they were all nobles, right? But there were trading cards, there were posters, people had their favorites, different cities had pilots that were their heroes. And they were well known.
There was like a fandom?
There was a fandom around pilots,
huh.
Right? And I think those little kids grew up into the 50s and wanted to fly. And the next most impossible technology at that time was cars, automobiles. It was a growing industry. It was amazing. It was sleek. It was futuristic. And the combination of those two things turned into like, oh, well, what I really want is to be able to fly like the heroes of my youth. I think that is connected.
It was also an industry that had changed very rapidly within their lifetime, right? They went from like Model T Fords to like a sedan, like those big behemoths they had in the 40s and 50s. And so they probably assumed that it would continue to change very rapidly. Although once they hit a certain point with cars, they kind of just stopped, right? They just figured, okay, here's the design. We're all going to agree on this. Now it's just about color and body shape, and that's pretty much it.
Well, because if you're not going to innovate the motive force transfer, like the actual physics of it, then you have to stop, right? We have a way to produce a fuel guzzling engine it's not in our best interest to make it super fuel efficient or super light or any of those things because we want to charge so much per barrel. Right? Those, it's the wagging the dog.
You go to the University of Arizona?
Yeah, so?
Good football team.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't really know.
Arizona Wildcats.
Right?
He can see you.
What?
He can see you.
When you're coming up with sci-fi stories, it's always like, how far ahead do you want to leap, right? Like, how far do you want to jump? Do you want to have, like, the flying cars are propellers? Do you want to have, like, glowy orbs under there, some kind of, like, anti-gravity thing? Or, like, a good example of, like, really, really far in the future is the movie The Fountain with Hugh Jackman.
Oh, love that.
I don't think so. I've seen that one.
It's worth a second watch. You might have seen it
I think
once.
that's an Aronofsky film.
I don't think I have seen it once. I don't think I've ever heard of this
definitely
movie.
check it out. But 1,000 years in the future, the
In my top 20 for
interstellar
sure. Wow.
spaceship is a bubble. Like, it's so
With a tree
far
in the middle.
advanced.
Oh, okay.
Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
gone kind of like zen about it. Like, there's
Yeah.
no moving parts. There's no whatever. They've gotten to a point where it's almost like it looks more like magic than sci-fi. You know?
Okay.
And so he's cruising space in a bubble with a tree in it, and the tree sustains him in the bubble. And he just, like,
And this is Hugh Jackman?
sits like,
Yeah.
sits like
Never heard of this.
Siddhartha
Interesting.
under the
Yeah,
tree.
it's
I'll
great.
check it out for sure.
Right? It's an interesting, but it's like you say, if you get too far afield, it's fantasy, space
Yeah,
fantasy.
right?
And if it's not far enough, you run into the problem, again.
Steampunk.
Well, yeah, so this is, all right, we're going there. The future isn't the point of the story. It's just the setting of the story, and your story has to be about something. So if you have clockwork cars, and your story isn't about building like the inventor building the car and his ride through life to build the car, why do you have to ever explain the clockwork car? You don't. You just have a way to separate it so people go, oh, it's not here. So some rules will be different. That's not this.
Yeah.
Right?
And you don't even have to say that, really. You can just, like, imply it, and people will get it. Usually.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And in near future stories, often what is done is you just set up a slight political change, which changes the whole world. But I went back and read Chambers. I had to take a writing field trip to Brandon yesterday. And so I wanted to revisit some audiobooks that I always found influential, but haven't had a chance to return to, or some books I found them on audio. So The King in Yellow by Chambers is the last name. The work that is often cited as inspiring H.P. Lovecraft's cosmic horror idea. Posits in America in one of the stories where, and they're talking about the future. It's the 20s. And in the future, which is the 20s, governments of America, but not in Europe, but in America, have decided that a certain percentage of people end their own life, and it creates a problem for society. In that, it's a surprise, and it makes people grieve, and you didn't see it coming, and it creates all this shame.
They have,
and
like,
it's just,
suicide boxes,
and
like
so
in Futurama kind of thing. Like,
that's where they're stealing that from. The
Yeah.
Futurama suicide box is from
that.
The King in Yellow. It's exactly that.
Okay.
They have a machine that's in the town square, and if you decide that it's your time, you just get into it, and it's fine, right?
Star Trek also had an episode like that, but it was once you hit 60.
I remember
you
that, yeah. I just-
you
yeah.
walk into the closet, and never
Yeah,
come out.
and the notion there
the closet, but-
is in the story is that that's not what the story is about. It's just the setting. The story to me is more about how a certain amount of despondency is always present, and how the writer sets up the fact that this despondency is always present and never talked about. What if sometimes people talked about it? How would it express itself, right? And if more people talked about it, it would express itself by maybe the government would provide a service, right? And make it easy and no shame. And they posit in this reality that the suicide rate does not change. It's just now
Okay to do it.
okay
Yeah.
to do it, right? And it doesn't create all the other biases. Yet the character is also sliding slowly into a destructive and criminal madness at the same time. So you're supposed to question whether, is that what that is, right? You're not sure. By the end of the story, the notion is maybe all the versions of the future he's seeing aren't real, just what he wishes were real, right? And so and that is why you would include it. Because then when you're discussing the story later and asking yourself what it's about, why is it there, why would you include these details, what does it say about the larger story, how does it express a character's point of view, how does it express the narrative in a way that, the phrase I use is that it rhymes with itself, right? So it's a very sinister and rather unsettling tale with just this as an observation. Oh, they're installing the new
And
booth.
when was this written again?
I want to say 18 something. I'm going to look it up.
Wow.
Okay, but in 1920. So like go not too far in the future, maybe like less than 100 years. So it's like, and they're kind of predicting government, like, the reason it's science fiction is because it's in the future, because it's speculation, and because it's not based on anything that's actually happened. So therefore, it kind of has to be. Isn't that kind of the definition of science fiction partly?
Like when you think sci-fi, you usually think jumping into the future. But
Well-
so much sci-fi we've seen is like just kind of a parallel version of the timeline. Right?
True. And sometimes it's about technology, specifically about advanced technology or something like that, right?
Yes, but it's the literati's term is speculative fiction.
Okay.
Right? You are speculating about the future. So you're right there, and you have the perfect definition of what science fiction is supposed to be. But right there, the fact that there is a definition of what science fiction is supposed to be, I say, throw that away. That's not you're not writing what's supposed to be. That's not the purpose of art. That's not the purpose of exploring an idea through writing and getting your idea out. It is to, as we said at the beginning of the show, make sense of the world that's now. And sometimes to make sense of now, you have to use your imagination to fill in the gaps of what you don't know. We do it naturally when we're speaking by using metaphor, right? To make a big idea simpler or a simple idea bigger. We use metaphor in order to do that.
It's like the magician's hot assistant, right?
No, this is a great example.
The pull of the story is this piece of technology. Like makes me think Ex Machina, right? The pull of the story is there's a robot lady. Let's watch this movie. In Downsizing, it's that technology to like shrink people. And they kind of like pull you in with that, right? That's the magician's hot assistant. But then it's actually about the people, right? Like in your story,
what's
the suicide booth is the piece of technology, but that's not what the story is about.
Yeah. So the story that we're talking about is The King in Yellow. It's by Robert W. Chambers, and it was first published in 1895.
Okay.
And it's talking about a near future.
Yeah, so like 30 years in the
1920,
future. Yeah.
Right? It's talking about a near future. So imagine now being that writer who is saying, I see despondency everywhere. It's
And I wanna
1895,
talk about
and I
that.
want to talk about it. But people don't want to. That's a
Yeah.
downer, right? No one wants to talk about
And
that.
it wasn't also at the time like science fiction was in like that was the birth of science fiction. That's when H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and those kinds of stories
Yeah.
were really getting popular. So you reach more readers by kind of jumping onto this genre as well.
Well, and so it was classified then as weird fiction.
Oh, interesting.
Because there was no term for science fiction. That
They didn't
wasn't-
even. Okay, maybe science gives it some legitimacy, right? Science
Right.
fiction.
Well, and so this is what I'm getting at, is that as society moves its own goalpost, what we call certain expressions in order to, frankly, monetize them, is to fit it into a genre, give it rules, and say, oh, if you want to play by these rules, come and play by these rules. But, Chambers or Lovecraft or any of those other people caught in the grist of their grinding society, they don't know any rules. They're in a room with no television, no radio, no nothing, just some paper and a typewriter, and they're just putting their idea out. They're reading the newspaper, they're talking to people, they've heard a guy who said a thing, who saw a thing. That's as close as you could get to a first-hand account most of the time. Mm-hmm. Now we have
Direct video, basically.
direct video of the event, and video itself has this intoxicating feeling of legitimate point of view. But a video in and of itself is a frame. And this is me now talking as a comics person. What you leave out of the frame is as important as what you're putting into the frame. So I could take a video of Dan angry at the coffee counter, and as long as it starts with Dan angry, we assume there's a good reason for him being angry.
Yeah, how many times have you watched a clip of something and gotten enraged and
Yeah.
like you jump on that mob mentality of like screw this guy, and then later on you read the actual full story, it's like, oh god,
Yeah.
no, that's
that's
just a clip of the actual
so
narrative.
That barista was a real asshole.
right,
Right.
or whatever it is, right?
When I find you,
Pop quiz, hotshot. There's a bomb on a bus. Once the bus goes 50 miles an hour, the bomb is armed. If it drops below 50, it blows up. What do you do? What do you do?
I'd want to know what bus it was.
So I'm on the bus today, waiting for the next exciting adventure.
Got your
Right.
phone ready?
No, and I don't have my phone ready. I have my dog-eared copy of a novel that I really like. It's a short story collection, and I'm reading it, and I'm looking around, and I'm seeing, like very specifically, there was a very elderly couple on the bus. Who were just looking out the window and chatting to each other, and they had their like bags in their lap, and then right behind them was some teenagers who are not talking to each other. They're not talking to each other, and they are on their phones, scrolling, and occasionally leaning over and showing. This is what I found the most fascinating. They're bumping each other and showing each other their screens, but neither of them are looking at each other's screens, but they're nodding like they've seen it.
Okay.
Right? And so this is their interaction, right? Like, so what are we saying there? I'm an old couple. I'm looking out the window. Let's comment on what we see scrolling by. We're not really looking at it. We're just here together. They're watching the world scroll by, and they're commenting on what they see. And they're not really looking at it, but they're just there together.
Okay, now make it sci-fi for me.
Well,
The bus
right?
starts flying.
So now, if you want to make it sci-fi, you just have in the seat behind them two people sharing the same dream through a device,
Okay.
right?
They got like an Oculus headset type
Right.
thing on.
Here's a
and-
dream, no headset. They're just
and they just occasionally plug into each other's.
plug into each other. They're sharing a dream. Now it's a little bit science fiction, and you could make that beautiful by having them present in a dream and in reality at the same time, or you could make it sinister that they can't even see the world around them because all they are in the dream world. That now comes down to the intent of the writer. You know, when you're writing, it's not, I shouldn't say we. When I'm saying we, I really mean me.
You're using the
'Cause I
royal
don't-
we.
right. Yeah, the royal we. Although, you know, I'm not really down with the monarchy. Or actually, I am down with the monarchy. That's what I would put on a slogan. But the royal we here is the story has to serve a purpose for you to make sense of something. And so it's not the plot. That's just a tool in making sense. It's not the element of science fiction or speculative fiction. That's just a tool to help it make sense. That's the metaphor. If what I really wanted to do was talk about how I see this gap in society, right, I would actually probably start with listing, as we did here, what's similar, not what's different. I was choosing to look for only the things that were the same. Because you could look at that old couple and be like, oh, that's better that they're looking out the window. But they're not really looking out the window. And you could look at the kids and say, like, oh, that's worse because they're not looking out the window. But I was looking out the
Both
window.
groups are just looking for connection.
Right. I was looking out the window. There wasn't much to look at, just like alleys with piss in them.
Yeah.
Right? So what is the better view? Right? It's
I
just
mean,
there
really,
to-
the thing they all have in common is they're all just killing time until they get to their destination.
Till they get to
That's
their
what happens on the bus. You're just killing time. That's why you're reading a book.
Right.
I often listen to podcasts, but it's like they're all kind of just collectively waiting.
Okay, so now we're breaking a story.
Uh-oh.
Right?
You're in a liminal space. It's not a space you're supposed to. You're on going from A to B. It's not a location where you're supposed to get comfy or spend a lot of time.
Right. So let's now
You're-
codify this. That's the rule. You just gave us the rule. What if society decided you must never do anything productive in a liminal space? You were forbidden. And people patrolled the liminal spaces, making sure that only distraction, only personal connection was being maintained. You were never allowed to.
So how do you break that rule? Like having a meaningful
Yeah, like if you had a
conversation?
meaningful conversation, carted off to jail, right? Right? Or ticketed. Or being
Okay.
told, like, the liminal space is not for that.
Yeah.
Now we're doing speculative fiction.
Well, for sure. I would be more inclined to say, like, let's start with realistic laws, like don't play your music so loud and don't have a loud conversation, because those are things you see happening in those
No, you
spaces all the
must.
time.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
must have a loud conversation that disturbs
The
everybody
conversation
else in
has
the
to be
space.
loud, vacuous. Your TikTok video has to be at maximum volume for some reason.
I've got like a bit of a structure building here.
Yeah.
One of the big social media platforms now owns, let's say, airports, right? So
Okay.
Meta owns the airports, and if you are not participating in a Meta app while at the airport,
Let's call them mega for the case.
Mega, yeah.
For lawsuit reasons?
Yeah, so you're not scrolling, you're not being engaged with their videos, you're not participating on their platform
You
while
don't get
at
to
their
use it.
airport, you are going to get in trouble.
Using the platform. Okay, so here's the great thing about this. I love language play in speculative fiction. So a social media platform, and a platform is where you wait for a train or a bus or
It's got to be
right?
sci-fi, so it's like one of those aromatic tubes that goes 700
Well, yeah.
miles per hour.
But if we
and-
call them mega platforms, and how you pay your way is with your attention
Does that show
on their social media.
Maniac, where instead of cash, you can pay with being advertised?
Well,
to?
this is what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's
Which
something
one is
like
that?
Maniac with Jonah Hill.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That was an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to give your attention. You have to watch an ad for 30
Yeah.
seconds in order to get it receive
somebody
something.
comes, like a spokesperson comes and reads ads at you.
Yeah, I can
is how
totally
she
see
paid
that.
for cigarettes.
And what if you had to spend so much time on the platform? So in order to run society, you had to be present in this liminal space. And that's why you'd have people making sure you weren't being productive.
Wait, so you're forcing them to travel?
Well, so let's
No,
say...
but just the people who have to travel.
No, what I'm saying is both of those things are true. Some people have to travel. They use the mega platform, and it gets them from A to B, and they're happy to give their attention to the stupid social scrolling vacuous rules. But what if that's part of where your social credit score comes from? That you have to spend so much time on the platform. So a person who would prefer to walk or ride their bike, right, doesn't have as nice an apartment as a person who is always on the platform.
Because they've perfected quick travel. So there
Yeah.
are no longer bus rides and
That's
car rides
right.
and walks. So people aren't on the platform enough, and the company is hemorrhaging money. So
Yeah.
now they're forcing you to sit around and doom scroll.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See? So now what we're doing is we are taking a collective experience that we have all shared, all seen, all felt, that we all have a different point of view on. And we're trying to say, how do you project that in another direction that has not yet been imagined? So in Chambers' case, it's these booths, right? In our case, it's a platform where the exception is the rule, right? And that's how you craft a speculative fiction space, is you make the exception the rule, and then say, if it was the rule, then what?
Maybe they've quantified attention, right? You have 100 points of attention in a day,
Ooh, I
and
like
you need to pay 30 points of attention to the megacorp, or your social standing lowers or something like that.
You have to
You
spend
get kicked out of your
30
house.
points on the platform.
Yeah.
Right. On the or you don't get. So even though you're comfortable at home, rent is due. So you got to go ride the platform. Even though you're comfortable, you're having a great time. Yeah, you're reading your book. Maybe you're pruning your cadenza, whatever. And now you got to get on the platform and be in this vacuous liminal space where all the videos are too loud and all the people imagine that's hell, number one for me. But now you have a reason to insert a character into that story who is changed by traveling through the space. Now you're writing a quote unquote science fiction,
They
speculative
have a
fiction,
human
weird
moment
fiction
in a
story.
place where
Where it's
you
not
are
allowed.
not allowed to have human moments.
So now that we have those rules set, and we have what is the human moment that this person is stealing every day, and then is in danger of being caught? What is that moment?
So
You
in
said
my-
meaningful conversation.
Well,
earlier.
in my mind, like whatever this building, this liminal space is covered in screens and ads, and it's just loud and bright and boom, boom, boom. So you can't even have a conversation. And maybe this person wanders off to the side and finds a room of broken screens, or a place where the ads have malfunctioned and they're not playing. They're not getting you over here.
Well, that's how it starts.
Yeah.
That's the inciting incident. Is like they're malfunctioning in this one
malfunction.
little 10-foot area.
Yeah.
Now, what I would do if I was going to make it this is a perfect moment for a meet cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
know,
thinking that
right?
it's a like this is they're going to meet somebody else, but it can't be obvious. Like even if they just come into contact with each other,
Yeah.
accidentally touch each other's hands and make eye contact, and then they connect.
So I have to tell you a story. This is little Gregory's story now. I used to ride the school bus because I lived outside the city, so I have to take the school bus into the city, into the big city.
And you just
Right.
on your phone the whole time?
Right, and there was no phones. And
What did you do?
It was all the people from that sort of part of. So typically speaking, if a school bus picked up someone in the city, everyone on the same street is getting on the bus. These are your neighbors, you know them well, you spend a lot of time with them. These are not unknown faces. But a rural school bus picks up people from all over. And I can tell you one time, little Gregory saw a little girl, and we shared the look. I think of it as the look. The look that means this isn't creepy, this isn't unwanted attention. Like we should probably talk, but you're terrified. You don't talk. That's what I would have happen in that moment, is that they have, as adults, the experience that I experienced as like a young teenager, right? For the first time, they're faced with a real human connection that is not fake.
Hope not, because, relationships that start under intense circumstances, they never last.
Yeah, and I would say we don't even need to have the monitors break down because it's something that can happen despite all the chaos around them. It's something that can happen. Just we can maybe make a reason for it, but we can just have it like they happen to. It just these two people happen to cross paths at this time. It is fate, or is whatever you want to think of it. And yeah, it's a meet cute essentially.
So you give
and then
us
they
the
keep
end.
and then they keep meeting. So yeah, they keep meeting every day, and this is part of routine. It's their commute. They see each other every day. They just kind of they acknowledge each other basically. They keep
They
building
build a
from there.
relationship at a distance. They just they're passing by.
They share the
Yeah.
look. So this is what I'm saying. So when I put this together in my head, I take Dan's idea and I say, that's what the story's really about. You can have these connections despite all this. You don't put that early. That's the end. That's what the story's about. So you have the malfunction be the first time they notice that it's possible.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now they maintain it, and then you have the lesson of the story be that actually they can do this all the time with anyone.
Here's my update on how I think this world could work. Everybody, when you go outside your house, you must wear your like Mysterio fishbowl dome on your head.
He just doodled this on the paper. I'm like, what are you drawing there?
I know.
So
I was like, is this a comet? What is
so
happening
rather
here?
than like going like maybe there's in this far off future, there's been more and more lockdowns. So when you leave your house, you must wear your fishbowl dome, and advertisers have now basically owned the dome. Like you're just getting advertised completely.
We
and you're
own
not
the
supposed,
dome.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to interact with anybody face to face in person because everybody's in their bubble, right?
Oh, their bubble.
They're in their bubble,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And even like walking around, we could show how you're getting this augmented reality, so you don't actually see the world around you. You're just getting like you're gonna walk straight, and then you're turning left, and then you're turning right, and it's all like on your view screen. You're not actually seeing it physically.
Okay, then I have the +1 to that moment.
All right.
Two people are in their bubble. They got their bubble helmets, and all the like filtering is going on. And a malfunction happens not in the screens, but in the train itself. It surges for a second, so that the two bubbles bump together and are disrupted for a split second, and they see. That's when the
Yeah.
look happens. They notice each other.
And how do they find themselves? Like how do you?
Okay, now what's great about this is if you wanted to make it a meet cute and romantic, it could be, obviously romantic, a love at first sight moment. But it could also be like just people making friends. Like it could be something a little bit more mundane, but also that mundane thing. Like it's hard to make any connection.
What if there's like a lost dog and the bubble will not acknowledge the animal, right? And they have to. They're both trying to like help this dog, but the bubble is keeping them from doing it, and so they at the same time they have the same like impulse to take the bubbles off to help the dog.
Oh, I love that. So they bump, they see each other, but then they also look down, and there's a third thing that needs their attention.
They get a glimpse of the world for
Yeah.
a second.
And so then how do you just, So you don't want to get caught taking off your bubble.
Because I think the government or the companies have put everybody to
The
such a state of
platform.
fear, right? Like you don't need to see outdoors, you don't need to breathe outdoors, you don't need to ever take off your bubble when you're outdoors, or you'll just immediately die or get sick.
Right. And it turns out
But that went on for so long,
Yeah.
and then the companies don't want to give up that control.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like there was a newer sci-fi, The Colony, where they tell everybody in this bunker that outside is dangerous, and if you go outside, you'll die. And
Was
then
that Colony? What was that called? That was the Apple one?
Cylinder Colony, was it?
Silo.
Silo. That was
yes.
it. That was
Silo.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's this this isn't spoiling.
It was
It's
a cylinder, though.
Episode 1, they start the one guy starts to question is outside actually dangerous,
Yeah,
or
this
is this just what we've been told for?
Yeah, dear listeners, this is the
decades.
first 5 minutes of
Yeah.
episode 1. He is not spoiling the show for you. And then, yeah.
But in our world, you have to, if you're not indoors, you need to have your bubble on, and
And the rule of the silo
Mega
was,
controls the bubble.
if you question, you get sent outside.
Yeah.
Right? You're allowed to question, but then you have to go. So nobody questions.
Yeah.
Unless they want to go. But if you want to go, like if you think you've had it with living in that society, all you have to do is mention that you think you'd like to go outside. And then now it's law.
Oh, you're talking about the show.
Yeah,
I
and then
thought
they
you were going
enforce
on.
it.
I'm like, this is sounding like the show you were talking
Yeah,
about.
no.
What are you
So
talking? I
that's
thought we were
what
doing
that
our story.
shows. And this is a good example, actually, of what I'm talking about, where the rule is being enforced contrary to common sense, and that's what makes it interesting, right? So you got to wear your bubble no matter what. That's crazy. But there are so many things we do that are crazy.
Yeah, you do have, I would say to any listener who does take the bus on a regular basis, look at people on the bus and just see what they do. Most people are on their phones. Most people are just sitting there looking at their phones the entire time, completely isolated from each other in this public space. So that is kind of the normal behavior that we see out there.
Is it any different though? Like when I was riding the bus back in college, so we're talking 2005, 6, 7. Like everybody was just in a book, right? Like everybody was
Yeah,
just
no,
reading.
that's true.
So you're still
or newspapers were really, back in the day, newspapers, people would
Oh,
actually
I
read.
remember,
Remember
yeah.
the Metro? It was like a
Yeah.
newspaper you could actually pick up on the bus and read, and it just kind of it was great. That kind of stuff was very popular. But yeah, that's all gone now.
because it's hard to engage with somebody when they might just be there for 5 minutes. You don't
Right.
know. Yeah,
you don't talk to somebody on the bus. I'm not saying that. It's just like people choose basically one way to kill their time on the bus.
Yeah.
Well, and also, let's face it, strangers, difficult to know where you stand or what's going on, and so everyone just wants the body language that is accepted that I'm busy. Don't talk to me. I'm just here for a short time, and I'm not interested in that connection. Perfectly reasonable and valid, especially on long commutes or otherwise. I have a short commute, so I get to.
You're in Winnipeg. Everybody has a short commute.
Yeah, we get
compared to,
but people that we know, even in larger Canadian cities like Toronto or Calgary or Vancouver, where the commute is at least an hour and a half,
like minimum.
right? Of course, you just want to be left alone. It
Yeah.
might be the only time you have, because that's now 3 hours of your day. Where it might be the only 3 hours where you get to choose what you're looking at because you're busy with everything else. So if you're going to write the story, then you have to pick your point of view, and you do have to drill down on what you feel is worth criticizing, and you have to take a stand. Here's the other thing that I see: books that are having stories that are having lackluster releases are picking no sides.
Yeah.
Right? They're picking no sides. They're trying to be as safe as possible, and as a result, they're not that interesting. I'd rather be angry at a book and keep reading I don't agree with this character, but wow, it's so well written. It's so well crafted.
Dr. Jonathan Ball always says you can't be somebody's favorite musician without being somebody's
Least
favorite.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You
yeah.
gotta.
Check out Writing the Wrong Way for more tidbits like that. And that's it. You have to divide the room a little bit, and you don't have to agree with your villain. In fact, it's really great if you don't. The best villains you're going to write are the ones you absolutely hate. You would never want to be like that person,
Yeah.
and that's what you put into
The
it.
Joffreys, the Umbridges.
That's right, and there's this. I worry at what happens if people learn to only write what they think people will agree with, or only write what they think people will disagree with for the attention, right? It's those two things. And that's the absence of an idea. An idea is like what we just did here. Is it good? Is it bad? Where's the connection? Why is it there? Is it a speculation? Is it that far-fetched? Like, we explored a lot of, just between two old people and two young people on the bus, we came up with a pretty compelling world. And a point, which is you can make human connection if you risk it.
Mm-hmm.
We should pitch the story to Black Mirror. This is definitely a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah. Feels like that.
Like,
yeah.
not a full feature length, but 40 minutes. Absolutely.
I'm the guy with the plan, because I'm smarter. I'm smarter than you. Yeah? Well, I'm taller.
So what's at risk? That's my question. To make it compelling and interesting, what's at risk?
I mean, what's at risk is their way of life, but we have to kind of make that clear. That we have to make clear what the consequences are for breaking the rules or whatever. And I don't know that just being kicked out. You were talking about Silo when you're saying being kicked out. That's been done a lot. I think just
That's
being kicked. It reminds me of like Logan's Run, which is another story about people dying at a certain age.
Their jewel changes
They have
color.
runner. They've got a thing, and at 30 they die. Well, they are whatever they call
They're
it.
floated into the sky and obliterated.
But the people think they're being reincarnated. I think that's what they're telling the people. Anyway, but they also leave the city in that one. They all go off and meet the robot.
Leave society and play by
Right.
their own rules. I mean, this
Something
is a pretty
worse has to happen than that. It can't just be them leaving. It has to be like their whole world comes apart.
I think like that outcast thing is just built into us like back when, humanity was like tribes, right? Like the worst thing you could do to a person is like you're
Exile
no
them.
longer part of the tribe. Like
And humans are very
exile.
social animals, so it would be a punishment for sure. But there's got to be something else. Like they lose status, they lose like they I don't know, they get moved down in the tiers of society or something like that. Sorry, these were like emphasizing caps.
it's so maybe whatever some kind of event, the inciting incident that makes their bubbles collapse for a second. And I'm thinking like holographic bubble, like they just put like kind of a necklace around their neck and it forms like a holographic bubble. It's not like a physical dome thing, so it makes a bit more sense to actually everybody be wearing these and it wouldn't be too uncomfortable. Maybe
I want them to be so uncomfortable.
Maybe they go too close to some kind of generator or something, and that disrupts the bubble.
Well,
and so now we know there's a chink in the armor of the network.
What if the disruption is based on this noticing the what if there's some, feral foxes that for some reason in this future different wild animals are packing strangely and large numbers of them sometimes get onto the subway, but no one notices.
Because they're all in their bubbles.
And so you could have nature invading and no one's noticing.
I love that. Like in the augmented reality, everything's pristine, everything's clean because they don't have to clean anything anymore because nobody actually sees it in reality.
Oh my
And then when you see the real life,
they see a Winnipeg bus.
As it really is.
As it really is. No. And then they have their moment. So, of course, in the context of a gritty, real thing, human connection is suddenly of value. Because it's two people against the problem as opposed to two people separated from each other and never having to face any problems whatsoever because everything's done for them. Platform to platform, they're being moved along. Now you have something to talk about, right?
Maybe they think they're in a walled city the entire time, and when they finally come out of it, they realize like they could get away from this place at any point. They just never.
Well, what I would have it now that it's playing in my mind.
Yeah.
I can see that what causes the lurch that made them thump together. I would show that lurch happen. Now imagine it's a movie instead of a book. So you'd have a montage of that lurch happening 15 times, 20 times on 20 different days. And this day is the day that two people are sitting close enough that their bubbles clunk. And the lurch is caused when a stop on the train ride, which is automated, that isn't on anyone's list now, opens the doors and these creatures come in and get onto the train. Not like monsters, not aliens, but just like some squirrels or like some, like I said, a
Like
fox
rodents,
or something, like a
like-
rodent
Yeah,
comes in.
pests more
Right.
like that
Yeah,
than
kind of like how pigeons have figured out the New York subway system and
That's
will
right.
actually get onto the subway.
Really,
and-
really?
Yeah, there's videos.
Pigeons are very smart. Yeah, they're smart as crows. They're called synanthropic species.
Okay.
Pigeons, crows, anything that grows as a result of the human population growing.
yeah.
Right? So you have some synanthropic species that are getting on, and it's kind of cute and it's benign, and so people don't notice, but they notice. And that means that lurch becomes an excuse for them to turn off their devices for a brief moment every day and have that connection. And now you have a window of time to be having. The system doesn't notice these animals, which means it wouldn't notice them being off for the duration of that stop. So you have a platform. And then how I'd end the story is with your idea, Dan, which is we can have this connection whenever we want. And when the lurch happens, they get off at that stop. And we don't know what's there, but it's wild.
There
They
has to
get-
be some kind of threat. Like another guy in his bubble is kind of the policeman, the officer, and when anybody's bubble is disengaged, like he gets a big alert, like somebody's doing something
like a
horrible.
technician shows up.
Yeah.
And fixes people.
And same thing, like from their perspective, something's being portrayed much worse than they've just taken off their bubble. Like they
Yeah.
are committing a horrible crime over there, and so this is the villain, but also you're seeing their perspective of like they think they're saving people by stopping
then
these people.
They could get caught with their helmets off in that last sequence. And now the only place they have to run is when the lurch happens, which now the audience knows and recognizes for what it means. The doors open and some things come on. Well, if things can come on, they can get off. And I would end it that way, where like they're off into that other world, right?
And the officer he doesn't see that the door is open because he won't come out of his bubble, so he thinks they've walked through a wall essentially, like he just can't follow.
Yeah, he can't follow them because he's got his thing on.
Well, take it off.
Yeah, he finds his last scene would be him finding their malfunctioned or discarded bubbles on the seats, right? And they've left. He doesn't see them leaving without them
They walk
into
into
this
the
other place,
forest.
right?
Cool.
So we didn't know we were doing a story break, but a good story comes out of a question of what is real now.
Yeah.
We wrote a science fiction story, right? Based
Started
on
as your boring story of the bus.
boring story of the bus. Was it
Never boring,
No,
actually.
never
Never
boring.
boring.
The bus is never boring.
But
you know
let's
what's
make
boring?
it sci-fi.
Uber's boring.
Taxis,
air flights
boring.
boring, except when the plane drops out of the sky for a kilometer or two. Those are exciting, but for the most part, boring. The bus is never boring.
No.
This has been Super Pulp Science, where we have talked about how genre gets made. This is Gregory Kmichuk encouraging you to join the fight, make comics, ride the bus, make a connection.